Got it.
Do. Spring Live! Part 2.
Part 2.
That's our opening. We got to do that from now on.
No, perfect.
You mean I have to do it?
Yeah, you have to do it.
Yeah. That's
Yes,
what
yes.
I almost feel like we should just stop this right now. Where's that end button?
Blinded by the sun.
We're up to about 5 people.
Okay, great.
So
Well, then we can go ahead and start. Everybody's going to trickle in. So, did everybody catch my intro? Hope they did. If you didn't, I'll do it again.
I think one person did. I think
Spring Live, Part 2. How's it going, everybody? I'm Nolan Guthrie. We're here at Chris's place again, and we're going to plant some more stuff. We're like right on top of last frost, right?
Yeah,
should
be.
Last frost is somewhere in between May 8th and 10th-ish, something around there.
And 4th of July in Idaho.
And it could really be any time,
Yeah.
but we're right on top of last frost, so this is a great day to plant. It's warming up, but it's still fairly cool.
Quick.
I thought it was going to be a little more overcast, but it is certainly a nice, just beautiful day. It's a good day for planting, and we're going to be planting those things that you didn't want to plant earlier when we did the first video. So we're going to do some tomatoes and peppers and some of those more frost-sensitive items today, and we're going to get into some of the common issues you might see, especially if you're a new gardener. There's a lot of things as you plant these, you start getting your tomatoes and your peppers in, you start noticing a lot of things, cracks in the tomatoes, leaves looking funny. And so we're going to talk about some of those things and kind of try to ease your tension so that you don't panic. That's one of the things I think happens to a lot of new gardeners is they kind of panic a lot of times. And these plants are pretty tough. They're
pretty tough.
They can take a lot of punishment. So,
Yeah.
so we're going to get into that stuff. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them while we're going. We will answer the questions in between our little segments here, and we'll get going. So the first thing we wanted to cover real quickly is what we did last week. I will say, Chris, you cleaned the place up nice. I appreciate that. Although you didn't mow your lawn.
I did not mow the lawn.
Yeah,
So
we're
we're going to be
Chris's jungle.
we're going to be trudging through this a little bit. So
Yeah.
over here, we planted a few things. So here's the onions we planted. Where's the potato?
Yeah, and that one did not
I
break
think
ground.
you buried it.
It never broke ground.
You killed my potatoes. Anyway, so we got our onions here. And you can see they're starting to grow. Mine are bigger, just going to say that, at home. And then, I don't know what this is.
The radishes.
Oh, I almost
the
stepped
radish
on them.
here.
Yep, those are the radishes.
We got this nice little row of radishes just starting up. Radishes are very fast. And then these are the peas we planted last time. They're just starting to break ground. So they're looking good. Looks like you did another row of peas on the other side here.
Yep.
A little slower, but
It was a week later that I
snow
did
peas
that
in
one.
there.
It's good to stagger your plantings as well, just because that way you kind of extend your harvest out a little bit longer. You don't have everything coming in all at once. So staggering that planting is a very good idea, especially with a lot of this spring stuff. You don't really need to do it with your tomatoes and your peppers and things like that, because they're just going to come on all at once no matter what. But these ones here, you want to kind of stagger those plantings so that way you get more time to harvest out of them, and you'll get a longer duration of harvest. So.
Yes, especially if you're doing corn.
Oh yeah, corn's
I'd
a
make
really
sure
good
you
one
do
to
a
do
row a week. Otherwise, you just have a ton of corn all
all at once. Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be done with corn. So, so that's what happened. That's what we planted last week. Chris killed the potato I planted. I'm gonna blame him, and it definitely had nothing to do with what I did. So,
Fair enough.
all right. So I think next we're gonna start. We're gonna start off with the big boy and get onto a tomato.
Yeah, I think that's the most popular vegetable that everybody plants. So I do want to talk about feeding your tomato, because I don't know if you guys have ever seen Jim Zamzo's 17-foot tall tomato that he grew, but when he did that, all the ingredients that he used, he collected and actually added to this bag of Tomato Boom. So if you've never used Tomato Boom, I mean, it works amazing. It literally has everything that your tomato's going to need throughout the whole season. So it is kind of low on your NPK, your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But that is important for a tomato, because if you put too much nitrogen to it, you'll get a great big huge plant that'll never produce fruit. So what he's done is he's added a whole bunch of the alfalfa meal in here. And that alfalfa meal, it's Nolan's favorite word.
Yeah. Good stuff, right, Nolan?
Yeah, the good stuff.
Good stuff.
I still don't remember the name.
Tricantanol. So it releases the tricantanol into the soil, and that's what's pushing the growth. It's a natural occurring growth hormone. But that's how he's getting them so big and so heavy in the fruit production. Another big one that this has is the calcium. It's 2% calcium, but that helps with the blossom end rot. So that's, if you've ever grown your fruit and on the bloom side, the bottom side of that tomato, it starts to brown out. That's either it's getting too much water or the lack of calcium in the soil.
It can kind of be both too, is the thing.
It can be both.
If you don't have enough calcium and you're watering incorrectly, and even if you have enough calcium, if you're watering incorrectly, you can tend to get some as well. Might not be as pronounced or as abundant, but it can certainly happen. So the two are very closely related.
Yep, very true. So with that, with the very first planting, we're going to dig our hole out, and we're going to put a cup of this down in the hole. And I'm actually going to also add our 3-2-1 tabs. These have 11 different strains of mycorrhizae in it. And mycorrhizae is a fungus that kind of binds to the root and helps that plant draw in water and nutrients out of the soil. So huge benefits to that too, so I'm actually going to do a combination of these with the tomato plant there. So we're planting a San Marzano tomato, because our favorite thing is making marinara sauce, so we do a lot of Roma style tomatoes in our garden. So we're going to plant that. I'm going to go ahead and dig the hole real quick for it. And a tomato is one that you can actually plant deeper than your existing root ball, because it will root wherever is below ground. It's like on this particular one, I'll probably break these
Kind of like
lower.
the potato you killed.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna break those lower stems off, give it more of a stem, and I'm gonna plant it all the way to that first ring there when I do plant it. If you have a real leggy tomato, you can actually plant them sideways and train those leaves to come up, so you have a whole trench with just the leaves coming up over here too, if it's a real leggy one. This one's kind of thick. If I tried to bend it, it would just snap it. Snap it. Not super root bound, so I'm not even gonna really worry about massaging the roots out or anything like that. Just gonna put it down in the hole. You can see the size of hole I dug, about how deep it's gonna be in the ground. I'm gonna add a significant amount, approximately a cup. You really can't overdo it. In fact, when Jim plants his tomato, he'll do it down in the hole, and he'll do pockets of tomato bloom around it. So as those roots go out, they'll find little surprises out there in the soil.
I liked Callie's, she called it little treasure chests.
Little treasure chests, yeah, exactly. Yep, it's a liberal amount of that tomato bloom. I'm going to throw...
You want one or two?
I usually do two. The 3-2-1 tab touching the root ball there. So that's kind of the first thing it'll hit, and that'll...
Got him.
Perfect. And then just do your backfill on it. A lot of worms. That's always a good sign. And then once it's planted, I think the first thing you really want to do is start to get a tomato cage on it, because I see it every year. Customers come in as that plant's already huge, and then you can't get the cage over it without breaking all the branches off and everything like that. So I usually immediately do that, and we still have, I think this week or next, we have some lows in the 30s. So I would still recommend getting that wall of water on it. We have one set up in the bucket. Normally I put a 5-gallon bucket upside down over the plant, and then put the wall of water on it and fill it, and then remove the bucket, and you're all good. We tried to speed it up. I don't know if this will work.
Yeah, it's gonna work.
There we go.
Teamwork.
Beautiful. Nice. We got our wall of water around it now. Because 30s, it won't, I mean, I think we're like 35, 38. That's not enough to kill a tomato, but it'll sure shock it. It'll kind of stunt it. And anytime you do that, it kind of sets it back about 2 weeks. So keeping that wall of water on it.
This is what we call the very ambitious tomato cage.
Yeah, the optimist maybe.
Absolutely.
Chris is putting a lot of faith in himself with this one, I think.
I think it's taller than you, Chris. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I get taller than the fence every year with that one. This one tomato plant will take up that whole 8-foot section of my garden. So I give it from post to post on my fence because those are 8 feet apart, and it will fill this whole area and get as tall as it.
All right, we get it. You're really good at tomatoes.
Really, really good. I love tomatoes.
Kelly's asking, what do you do if you've already planted your tomatoes? I'm not 100%.
As far as
like
feeding?
maybe as feeding.
Oh, feeding? Oh, yeah, sure.
Feeding? Absolutely. So you've already planted, just top dress or side dress with the tomato boom. So just take a half a cup, even a cup, and put it right around the base of that plant. And you'll want to do that throughout the season, probably every 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks.
And
3 to 4 weeks.
You
is
can
what I
even
do.
3 to
Yeah.
4
if
weeks.
you haven't put any Thrive on it, you can do that as well. You can even do that with the tomato boom. Actually, I think a little later we're going to water this stuff in. We're going to water it in with Thrive. So even if you put a fertilizer on it, you put tomato boom in the soil, you can still use Thrive on top of it. It's not going to be too much. So.
Yep. Like they marry together really nice.
Yeah.
I like doing them almost on opposite weeks. So it's easy to
There you
remember.
go.
I go out and I do something all the time. This week I do Thrive. Next week I might do Tomato Boom. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
get
have
some
fun
kind of a
with it.
schedule on it.
When
Yeah.
you're feeding all natural, you don't have to worry about burning. So that is.
Yeah, that's a
That
big,
is
big bonus.
big
And what's
bonus.
nice is that these are natural and they will boom. They'll get big once they start working.
Gina just said, sorry, I'm new at this. What is a wall of water? Do you want to cover that real quick?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got
With your
an empty one here.
non-permeable membrane. I'm getting that into every single video. by the way,
Perfect.
Just fair warning.
You just feel smarter, don't
I
you?
love it. Yeah. I have learned something from these videos.
So wall of water. This is a wall of water. So plastic. It has like 2-3 inch cells all the way around it. So as you're setting it up, Nolan's trick is great.
I can't take credit for it. I appreciate that you tried, but
It's a great trick. So if we did our planting, say your plant's right there, put your bucket over it just to support your wall of water. Set your wall of water around it, and then you'll fill these individual cells with water. And the sun heats those cells up, and then at night transfers that heat down into the soil and protects the plant from frost and just keeps your soil warmer so you get a longer season.
Yeah,
Basically, it's extending your season.
Cold soil sure slows them down.
It does. Yep. Which this year's, a little bit different. We've been so warm so early. It's not as big of a deal. Like I say, this week we do get down into the 30s again. So it's a good idea just to protect them, extend your season with something like that.
Jennifer's asking, do you add garden fertilizer to tomato plants as well?
You don't need to. If you're using the combo of Tomato Boom and Thrive, that is literally everything that they're going to need.
And honestly, I think this will come up over and over again in the video, but we tend to use Tomato Boom on stuff that is not tomatoes all the time.
Absolutely. There's nothing you can't plant with Tomato Boom. I mean, it's good for everything. Yep. Yep. He just named it a Tomato Boom because that's how he formulated it, was by growing his 17-foot tall tomato. But there's nothing you can't put that on. Perfect.
what else? What other tricks do we have about tomatoes that we can give everybody?
Did I grab another tomato?
You did bring
Pruning.
one. Pruning's a big one. I say, what we might show as this tomato gets above your wall of water. I tend to leave the plant in there until the leaves are getting to the top because tomatoes do like warmth. They like to be warmer. That's what activates growth. It gets it moving. So I like to wait till it's getting to the top of that wall of water before I pull it off. And then once you've taken it off and it starts to grow, Chris is going to show you how to prune a little bit. And there's a lot of different opinions on how to do that or how much to do it. But the main
And
thing
they
is
all
you
work.
can't, yeah, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
that's-
The main thing is they all work. You can do anyway. I've seen people like plant a tomato like this and cut it down to the ground almost, and they still come back. So they're very tough plants.
Yeah.
You don't have to be nice to them. And then as it really starts to fill out, you just start kind of helping those branches find these supports so that they kind of have this place where they can sit. You can tie them off. I usually don't. just because they end up getting so strong anyway.
Sure. Yep.
Real quick, we had a question. Scott is asking, is there any change if you were planting into a raised bed instead of straight into your soil on how you treat these tomatoes?
No. Well, yes and no. It depends. So raised bed, no. You treat it the exact same. If you're doing a container, like a whiskey barrel or some sort of a pot, you're probably going to need to feed more than you would in ground or in a raised bed. But otherwise, no. You treat it all the same.
Yeah, I think that can have a lot to do with your mix too. If you did, you know, if you shouldn't use something that's just compost. You want to have some sort of topsoil or something like that in there to kind of give it that heft, that anchor. And the compost, you got to refill that every year. You're going to keep putting more compost on there, and that makes the entire soil better. So if you're planting into something that's just straight compost, that's probably not a good idea. You want to make sure that it's incorporated with some regular soil. And then, like Chris said, even if you did something like a raised bed mix, is a good mix, but if it doesn't have that soil, I would say you probably need to add a little bit more fertilizer as you go on, because it's going to eat it up really fast.
Yep.
And Lois is asking, rather than wall of water, can you cover the tomatoes with a blanket tent instead?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that'll protect it from frost. It won't heat the soil the way the wall of water will. But if we're going to get a frost, absolutely a sheet or anything like that would work. You can't use plastic because plastic will transfer the frost through it. But anything
just like a flat
semi-permeable will absolutely work.
A blanket, if you have that. Some people will use like a milk jug. I don't know if those work really well, but I've seen people do it. You can use, we also have the frost blankets. We showed that in the last video. That's another one you can do. Or the hot caps, if it's small enough.
Absolutely.
You can do a hot cap, and that's just like a wax paper sort of thing that you can do. So.
I think a milk jug will work as long as the leaf's not touching
Touching the plastic.
Yeah. Because then it'll transfer. But it at least keeps the frost from settling on it.
I hope you guys weren't married to your outline, because we got a lot of questions.
That's fine.
All right,
Melinda's asking, what's the difference using tomato boom to the pepper popper?
Oh, huge difference.
Well, let's get into that. We're going to plant a pepper next, so let's get into that when we get to the pepper.
Okay.
Okay. The next question, Jennifer's asking, what's the difference between Thrive and the chicken soup mix? Can you use both interchangeably?
I wouldn't use both. There's no need to use both. So chicken soup is, I mean, it has everything that Thrive has in it, plus additional, I mean, a huge mineral pack added into it.
It's got the alfalfa meal.
Yeah, the alfalfa meal added into it. So there would be no reason to use both, because the chicken soup has everything that Thrive does, plus a lot of extra stuff.
I don't have a lot of experience with chicken soup yet, but
I'm still learning that one.
I typically still use Thrive. I think we all tend to be kind of creatures of habit when it comes to gardening, and once you find something that you like, you kind of just tend to do it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is like I just know Thrive. I know how to use it. I know how much. I know I can get away with not being as super accurate. And I feel like what I want to do with chicken soup is kind of over the next few seasons start to use it in a few different spots. So I'm going to use Thrive always. You know, I'm always going to have that. So I'm probably still going to water stuff in with Thrive, but then I'm going to hold on and use chicken soup later in the year just to... I like to see how things react differently as well. So it's kind of up to you, really. And that's the nice thing about gardening, is you can try different things. What we do isn't necessarily what you're going to do, and you're going to become your own gardener. And that's what's the beauty of gardening. Is for every gardener, there's a different way to do gardening.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And pruning will be one of them. So pruning, I was trained by both Jim Zamzo and his dad, Bernie Zamzo. And they are night and day different. So, I mean, Jim, he likes to keep everything contained within his cage. So he lets the plant start to grow, and then anything that starts to pop outside of the cage, he just takes a pair of shears and lops them off. Where Bernie, he'd get more precise using his pruners, say, I like this branch, don't like this one, and he would remove that one. He would do it very tediously. Both produced about the same amount of actual fruit. It all depends on how much time you want to put into it. But starting, I don't know if we can get close enough here, but right here is what's called a water sprout. So you have your main stem, and you have a lateral branch, and then right in the middle you have that water sprout right there. And that's never going to produce a flower, which in turn won't produce a fruit. So that's what you want to kind of start concentrating on, is just nipping those little water sprouts out, which you can use your pruners or you can just use your fingers. I usually just use my fingers when they're that size. But that's how you start pruning. After that, just keep it contained to the space that you gave it.
Kind of in that
Pretty
same
much.
vein, Larita's asking, should you pinch off early blooms?
Yes, that's a great question. Blooms draw a lot of energy for that plant. And this first month, you want it concentrating on root development. So you do want to pick that, like this one's got some blooms right there already starting, and you do just want to pinch those off.
And
And
a
get
lot
rid
of
of 'em.
a lot of people, when they go shopping for their tomato, they're looking for blooms. They want blooms because they think they're going to get tomatoes on them faster, but that's really not the case.
Right.
Even if there's a bloom on it at planting time, it's going to produce more blooms later on. They're going to usually set about the same time, so they're really not worth keeping.
Yep. It will slow you down. You'll get more fruit in the end if you get those roots out and going at the beginning. Yep, that's a great question.
Kevin is asking real quick, spacing on tomatoes?
Again, that varies a lot. So there's two different types of tomatoes. There's a determinate tomato and an indeterminate tomato. The way I remember that, a determinate type of tomato, you can determine how big it will get. So if you're doing a patio tomato or something in a container, or those topsy-turvies that I never liked, but those would have been all determinate
Shots
types
fired.
of tomatoes. Indeterminate, well, that's how Jim got a 17-foot tall tomato. That's how much energy are you going to put into it and how much food are you going to give it. But they'll grow and grow and grow as long as our season will allow. So an indeterminate, in my garden, I give 8 feet, 8 feet apart.
For your tomato shrubs?
Yeah, my tomato shrubs. How much do you give yours in yours?
I give mine a little bit less, but I don't use as big a cage. I like to keep mine a little bit smaller, so my cages are only about that tall, and I tend to keep them right about there, so I only give them about 6 feet. About
But
three,
it's- it's
three
a-
on each side.
It's a lot easier to harvest the more space you give. I tried that square foot gardening one year, and I thought that was the most frustrating thing ever.
Man, you're just spitting fire
Yeah.
right now.
To be fair, you're huge, though. You know, you need that extra room.
Exactly, but I think the more space, the better.
Rocky is asking, do you recommend protective plantings like marigolds to repel?
And I've never had luck with marigolds repelling. In fact, I find them more of as an attractant. So that's generally where the earwigs are going to go, is towards your marigold. So at least you have a spot that you could spray if you need a chemical form of control. So that could be a benefit. It does attract pollinators, bees and things like that, but I don't really think they're a good repellent. I think they're more of an attractant.
They
So
attract them away. So
They
you
attract
don't want
them
to
away
plant them
from-
next to your plant. If you want to do it, plant them a little bit away from the plant so it brings the bugs over there. Aphids aren't going to like either of them. Aphids don't like tomatoes and they don't like marigolds, so they're not going to work on aphids. They both are going to repel them individually. But something like an earwig, which are just a pain in the butt no matter what,
Yep.
you want to get those away from it if you can. So
There you go, Dad. Jennifer's asking, so you pinch blooms for one whole month? Like that first month, the kind of shock?
I do. Yeah, up till June, I would concentrate on stuff like the tomato boom, the thrive, things like that, and then about Father's Day. So there's always those 3 numbers on your bottom of the bag, right? It's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Usually about Father's Day, I start pumping up the middle number, the phosphorus, because that's what's going to produce your fruit and flower. So you could use something like our Thrive Bloom, or a triple
And
super phosphate. Or
just to add to
something
that,
like
I don't
that.
think a month is a hard and fast rule. I don't wait
Sure.
a month. I usually just take off the first few weeks as I'm, babying it, taking care of it, getting out there and weeding and stuff. I'll prune off the few flowers that I see, but I don't do it, you probably don't know, oh, it's been a month, I'm going to let them go.
That's
But,
very true.
about that time, you just want to give it time to kind of rest and really focus on pushing out its roots. That's the main thing. If you're starting to see a ton of growth, then it's got what it needs down below and it's pushing. So it's okay kind of once you're really seeing a lot of growth to go ahead and let it lie, or what I would do. If it's still kind of, what this guy will do is kind of nothing for the next 3 or 4 weeks. He's going to be about that tall. Even with the fertilizer and everything we put in there, he's not going to do a lot of growing. They're going to be pretty slow. But then as soon as it warms up and they hit that fertilizer, they're going to take off and they will go crazy.
It's always right when I give up on them. It's like, man, this thing's not working. It's broken, something's wrong, and then they explode.
Don't
Yep.
give up on them. They will start growing, and they will take off.
They will. You got to remember, it takes about a month for that fertilizer to break down to be in a usable form for that plant. It takes the bacteria in the soil to actually digest it and put it into usable form. That usually takes about a month. Yeah.
Scott's back asking, what about chickens or ducks in the area? New gardener, should he segregate?
At the beginning, I would. Yeah. As a nice small plant, they will destroy. They will eat it. But once they're up and big enough, or probably bigger than your duck and your chicken, then it's fine to release them in the garden area.
Eat some bugs?
Yep, eat some bugs. There's benefits.
Have you ever seen a duck eat slugs?
No.
Apparently people will train their ducks to eat the slugs out of the garden. It sounds disgusting, and apparently it is. But supposedly you can do it. The ducks will eat your slugs.
There
We
you
don't tend
go.
to have a lot of slugs here, but they
They
show
get
up every
little
now and then.
ones.
The little ones.
Yeah. Not like where you're from.
Yeah,
Big
Portland, they
banana
have
slugs.
giant slugs, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to
Any
move on
other-
to peppers?
Yeah, any other questions?
I think
on
we're caught up.
Tomatoes? All right.
All right, awesome. So we're going to move on to peppers. Again, if you have questions, throw them at us. The peppers, I would say, I don't tend to think peppers are, they're not given as much attention, mostly because they just don't, they're not as showy as the tomatoes. Tomatoes get huge. They keep growing. Your peppers are never going to get as big as a tomato. I know you can get them pretty large, but even at best, you're probably looking at maybe 3-4 feet. And that would be the best you could probably really do for a pepper. Peppers are much smaller plants, and they don't produce as much. So you usually want to have, like I like to do 2 peppers to every 1 tomato I'm planting. So I like to do more peppers because they just don't produce as many. And I personally, I like peppers more. So it's the one I tend to kind of fall back on. I always plant tomatoes, but I prefer my peppers. So what did you get here, Chris? Is this a
Well, I got a
Bertha?
variety. I don't remember which one.
Oh, this is a Tiburon.
Oh, Tiburon.
So this looks like it's like kind of a big Anaheim.
Yeah, kind of like a poblano.
Okay, cool. I've not planted this one, but I'll bet it's tasty.
They're really tasty.
So you-
Sweeter, great for stuffing. If you like to do stuffed peppers.
Oh, nice.
That's why we grow that one.
Cool. So this is Tiburon. It's a green pepper. It's going to be more of like a sweet pepper. And the thing about peppers is you're not going to plant them like a tomato. You don't need to go very deep. Is this the right spot, Chris?
Yep,
Is this
that's
good for you?
perfect.
Okay. You don't need to go very deep because unlike the tomatoes, they're not going to root out of where the stem is. So you got to plant this more like kind of your normal sort of plant. But as we mentioned before, you're going to use kind of the similar things. You can use other stuff, but if you've got tomato boom, you know, you might as well use it. But you can use other things as well. Unlike Chris, I don't necessarily put the plant in first. I don't know why you did that. It seems weird to me, but to each his own.
Let's just, once again, compare tomato cages. So,
Yeah, that's a good indicator as well. The peppers, they just don't get as big, but that's fine. They can still produce a lot for you. And like I mentioned with the tomato, they're not going to do a whole lot for a while. The pepper's going to be even slower. So give it time. They don't, you know, really push as quickly as your tomatoes. They're just a bit slower. So here we got, again, not much root ball. It's not really doing much. So you don't have to worry about, you know, trying to break that up or any. This is still really early in the season. You know, great time to get them because the plants are just ready to go in the ground without much extra stuff. So we've got our tomato boom in there. Again, you can use other things. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit because we don't want to get that crown buried. If you get that crown buried, you can end up getting rot, and we don't want that. But that's about all you need.
Perfect. Want to shove a 3, 2, 1 tab down in there?
Yeah, I forgot about that one, huh? But it's okay.
Nice. Yep, then you can do that. Even the person that said they already planted their tomato.
And
You
then
can
as we
still
kind of
just
go
take
along, can you hand me that pepper popper, Chris? So here's the pepper popper. You don't need to do this right away. I probably wouldn't do it right now. But pepper popper is just a different formulation. The big thing in pepper popper is the magnesium. And that's something that the peppers really like. The first time we got pepper popper in, I got a test bottle of it and I took it home to my peppers, which were already in good shape. And I went and sprayed it on those guys, and the next morning when I came out, every single leaf was standing up like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've never seen something act so quickly as when I used Pepper Popper and putting it on these ones. You can use Pepper Popper and some other things. It's really not necessary. It's really specifically formulated for peppers, and it's mainly that magnesium. They really like that stuff. So right now you don't have to do it. It's got its tomato boom in there. It's not going to do a whole lot. It doesn't need this right now. But as you start to notice some new growth, it starts to put on some height. Go ahead and start hitting it about every couple of weeks. And you're just going to, it's a foliar, so you're just going to spray it all over the plant. Try to do it in the evening. It's just a good idea, kind of a general practice to do those sorts of things in the evening. Because if you put water on the foliage of things and it's in the middle of the day, you can tend to kind of burn some stuff. So whether it's organic or not, it's a good idea to just, good practice to do it in the evening or early in the morning, just so it has time to kind of absorb and do its thing. And as Cory mentioned, your peppers don't need as big a cage. They don't need much. And this is a big cage for a pepper, really.
It is a big one for it, yeah. Yeah,
because they're,
in all reality, that's probably going to get
yeah,
somewhere in that height.
Even if you're really trying to push them, they don't get very big. They're not a huge plant. But with something that's nice, I've had, I would say, almost doubled my production when I started using Pepper Popper. Especially I got a habanero. If you like that hot pepper,
yeah.
It is ideal. And I love growing a habanero. I actually usually grow two because I like having them.
Yeah.
I use them on a lot of different things, but you will get way more habaneros. And you'll even get, usually on a green pepper or a bell pepper, you're going to get maybe 3 or 4. You might get lucky and get 5, really, peppers off of them. But you could get up to 7 to 10
Easy.
bell peppers off of, with using that Pepper Popper every 2 to 3 weeks. And you will be amazed at how much production they put on. So peppers, in my opinion, I always like the easier things. Tomatoes they're needy. They want you to do stuff. They want you to mess around with them. Peppers kind of want to be left alone. They don't need to be really, you don't need to do a lot to them, and they will just kind of do their thing and they'll grow. They really need heat. I think for them to be really productive, they need something like 90 plus for an extended time to really start putting on production. So you're going to be waiting for a while. This year it might not be as long. It's been pretty warm, so we might be able to kind of get some production off of them a little bit earlier. But you're going to be waiting for a little bit longer. You're going to be harvesting these kind of towards the end. Another good idea, if you've got, Chris has got good exposure here. These guys just came out of the greenhouse. The tomatoes protected with that wall of water. It should be fine. You might put something right there just to give it a little bit of shade in the morning, this time of day. It'll get sun in the afternoon, or actually you want to reverse that. Put something on this side so it gets a little bit of shade in the afternoon. That's when it's going to be the hottest, and that'll just help from sunburn. And especially once you start getting your peppers on there, you want to have some sort of shade, because that's one of the biggest things I deal with later in the season on my peppers is sunburn.
Yeah.
You get that big bell and the leaves just aren't big enough to cover it, and it can't get shade, and so you get a sunspot on it, and it doesn't ruin the fruit, but it certainly, you're losing some of that meat.
The portion of the fruit.
Yeah, you're losing some of it. So it's a good idea later on, as that fruit gets really big and they're no longer being shaded, just put something. It doesn't have to be much. I'll usually take just a couple stakes and put you can put, I've even done like a t-shirt. I put a t-shirt on a hanger and just set it right there, just so it gives it a little bit of shade in the afternoon. Nice. You can do something simple as that, and that'll just help those guys as they're getting into summer.
Jennifer's looking for a little clarification on Tomato Boom. Tomato Boom instructions say to side dress every 3 weeks. Sounds like you guys say to use it weekly or alternate between Tomato Boom and Thrive every week?
Well, it's 3 to 4 weeks on the Tomato Boom, and then alternate, so not every week. I would say every other week you're doing something. So you're twice a month you're doing either Thrive or Tomato Boom. Yeah. So thanks for that. We probably were not super clear on that.
We were talking about a lot of things.
Yeah,
and I think here's one thing to remember as well. If you're doing something every couple of weeks, that's plenty. There's a point to which more of this doesn't do better. it's gonna use what it uses. So you don't have to keep pouring stuff to it with the organic stuff. So do something every couple of weeks, and then it's okay to leave it alone. If you go a month without giving it anything, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll kind of find what you kind of do is you kind of find your own groove, I guess, for lack of a better word. You kind of find out, like, this is what I find easy and what I find helpful. So just kind of keep that in mind. There's no hard and fast rule with any of this. You're going to find out what works for you. Chris and I, Cory, we've been doing it for a while, so we've got those things, and I think we tend to try to push the envelope and try to do more and more and more. And so we kind of tend to do things a little bit more frequently, but not the same thing over and over again. That helps.
Gina's got a quick question. Moving to a new place beginning of May, cannot plant tomatoes and peppers until then, or is that too late?
Beginning of May?
Yeah.
That's plenty of time.
Oh yeah, you got plenty of time.
And honestly, we've had years where we get that late frost that comes the 20th of May, 24th of May. We had a Memorial Day a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And killed a lot of tomatoes and peppers. People were still able to plant.
Yeah, and depending on variety, I've planted in July. With an early girl, they only need 50 days, 55 days to produce. So you might pick your variety.
Try to get something a little smaller, like a early girl, a Roma, sweet 100s. Those are going to be smaller tomatoes. They don't need as much time to develop big fruit. You don't want to go, in June with a beefsteak, because it's just a huge tomato. It needs that time to get to that size. So
like 100 days, I think.
Yeah, they take forever, and it's probably with a pepper you really need that time, because starting late on a pepper is probably a little more devastating than on a tomato. You could still do something like jalapenos. Jalapenos will produce like crazy. Anaheims, I've always had tons of luck with Anaheims. They're one of my favorites. I plant usually 2 to 3 Anaheims just because I love the flavor of them. But they will put on a ton of tomatoes. Your big bell peppers, they need more time. Same with the habaneros. Even though they're a smaller pepper, it usually takes them a little bit longer because they need a lot of heat, and that's really your determining factor there.
If it makes you feel any better, I still haven't planted my snap peas, Gina, so you're in good company. I'm doing that tomorrow. Canessa, it looks like, has a question. When starting tomatoes and peppers from seed, when should they be transplanted into the garden?
I think you're good. Normally I would say May 8th.
10th, 15th.
Yeah, 10th, somewhere around there. But the way this year's going, I think you're good.
I would say once you've
go ahead, just get them protected with the wall of water. Or
if
something
you've
like
started
that.
them from seed and you've got 3 to 4 true leaves on them, I think you're good to go. And what's nice with doing this sort of stuff is they'll probably start producing at the same amount of time as that one.
Yeah.
You're not losing any time with that. It's really the temperature that's kind of the big factor there. So.
Scott has a question. He still has about 3 quarts of Thrive from last season. Any degradation in the product?
No. It gets a little thick with age, and it settles to the bottom. Maybe just add a little bit of water and shake it up, and it'll be just fine.
We've even seen some moldy Thrive with that top layer. Still totally fine to use.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We call it aged.
That's right.
Maybe don't sniff it. It might not smell great.
Yeah, probably not. We didn't talk about spacing.
On the peppers?
On peppers.
I do my peppers really close.
I do too.
They don't need much room. It's not going to get much bigger than that cage, so you can pack them pretty close together. And that's.
I'll do 4 in this row.
And that's like what I do. I like to do 2 peppers to every 1 tomato. So I like peppers more than I like tomatoes. The rest of my family really likes the tomatoes, but my favorite to grow is the peppers, just because I just like the flavor of it.
Agreed.
So
Marla has a question about planting in fabric pots. Tomatoes in fabric pots.
So as long as it's big enough, because those roots do go out a ways. So if it's something, at 12, 18 inches across, probably not enough to support. But again, pick your variety.
Yeah.
You do a determinate type of tomato, then you can absolutely do a smaller
And you can
pot.
prune it. You can keep it pruned, keep it a little smaller. Don't think you have to get a tomato that's 6 foot tall. They don't have to be that big. You can control it and still get a lot of tomatoes on it. It can just be a couple feet tall, and you'll get tons of production off it. It doesn't have to be big. I think we just kind of tend to get it in our head that a big tomato means I get big tomatoes and a lot of them. But if you don't have the space for that, you can still get a lot of tomatoes in a really small location. So
I've seen a patio tomato, probably 2.5 feet tall, and it was just skirted with tomatoes.
Have you seen like how they do it in like the greenhouses where they just prune everything up and the tomatoes just hang down?
Yeah.
Like you can, those things are nothing. They're like, you know, this tall and there's like no leaves on them, and it's got, you know, 20 tomatoes hanging off of it. So you can do a lot. They are very tough plants, and they want to make tomatoes. That's like the only thing they have a mind for. So.
But the fabric pot absolutely works.
Yep.
Yeah, we've had good luck with those.
And especially, you know, if you're light restrained, where you can actually go out and move that pot around,
right?
And get a little bit of extra light.
Right.
Definitely.
If you're in an apartment or something and you just got a little patio,
north-facing garden spot,
perfect.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You can move it from one side to keep getting sunlight all day, and you're going to have to water more. That's something to keep in mind.
And feed more.
So.
Yep. But my neighbor across the street does it every year. Lines his driveway with tomato pots. You know, they're pots.
Yeah.
Probably 24 inches across.
That's what my dad started doing too.
Yeah.
Just get some nice little pots and he's starting to grow tomatoes. So.
Kevin wants you gentlemen to talk about watering of peppers and tomatoes. Kevin, we have that on the outline, and we'll definitely discuss it.
Yep.
Okay.
Amber's got a question. What do you recommend to keep bugs off of tomatoes?
That's also in our outline.
Also in the
We're gonna get to
outline.
that one.
Yep.
Is sunlight important?
Sunlight's very important. I mean, really, tomatoes and peppers, the bare minimum I would go is 6 hours. 8 hours is really best.
Yeah, 8 to 9 hours
Yep.
is probably ideal.
Yep.
They need a lot of sun. The heat is what gets them moving. So they need that heat.
Yep. This particular spot here, I mean, if the sun's up, it's hitting this
Yeah,
spot.
you're almost, 10 hours of sun on these guys. So
Yep,
it's going to
easy.
be great.
Kim, real quick. Loves the weekend classes. Thank you, Kim. This has been a lot of fun for us, too. Nolan, were you able to get the videos posted on the website, or are they just on Facebook for now?
Some of them are. I haven't gotten all of them up there, but most of them are on the website. If you're on the home page, find the home button at the top menu and just hover over that. You don't need to click it. Just hover over, and it'll drop down a menu which will have Zamzo's videos, and the majority of them are in there.
Perfect.
So,
And we'll have this one added?
This one will be on there as well.
Nice. Good deal.
Yeah, perfect. Well, should we go to a zucchini?
Do it.
All right.
I'm not going to
Oh,
plant
man.
that one because I don't like zucchini.
You don't like zucchini?
No.
He's a pepper guy. He's made that very, very clear.
You can make zucchini boats stuffed with peppers.
try to convince me, Chris. I don't
It's really
like
quite
zucchini.
tasty. Nice. So we're gonna do a zucchini over here. I had a broken trellis. This is the top to a trellis, but I'm gonna put this over it and actually train my plant to grow over it, and the zucchini will actually hang down from that for harvesting. Like last year, it went up the fence, and the zucchini were hanging along the fence there. It keeps them off the ground. They ripen a little bit better if the sunlight does hit them a little bit, and it keeps the slugs out of them. If anything's resting on the dirt, it's just attractive to the slugs. So I like to get them off the ground a little bit. You could even do something like we did with the peas over there. You could do that same sort of a trellis tent like that for them too. But the zucchini you're gonna plant really just like you did the pepper. You want your root ball flush with the ground. You can't go deeper than that. And just know these grow like crazy and they get huge. I mean, this can take up 8 feet of the garden easily.
It's going to...
I'll constantly be pruning it to keep it out of the grass, but it'll go way back into the flower beds too. So they do these need space. I've seen a lot of customers do these in a container and that's fine, it works. As long as you have the root ball, just the vine's gonna come way out of the pot, but that's totally okay. Yeah, so again, we're just gonna dig a shallow hole. I'll make Nolan happy and I'll put the tomato boom in first.
You do it how you want, man. I'm not your boss.
We're going to have to come back and do an update video just to see which one of you wins this
Yeah, I know,
thing.
right?
Yeah,
I'm kind
alright.
of curious.
Well, that's not fair because he's going to kill everything I planted.
Like the potatoes?
Yeah.
Just prune his off right there.
I don't... What happened?
Get a nice root ball, but not taking the shape of the pot, so I'm not going to worry about massaging that.
You know, we've talked
or
about that a
anything
few
yet.
times, Chris, but I don't know that we've really discussed what to do if it is. Let's cover
So
that now.
yeah, so if you pull this out of that pot and those roots have taken the shape and they're just circling it, you really want to just massage that root ball. You're just kind of breaking it up a little bit. That way the roots are going out and not around, because they'll just continue to grow in that circle if that's what they're doing. So, and you're not going to hurt it. So you just rough it up a little bit. Is what you would do.
Get rid of some of that
Yep,
potting soil and
Yep, massage them out so it's literally hanging like that. And don't stress, you're not going to hurt the plant. It will be fine.
unless Nolan planted it.
Unless Nolan did, yeah. I used my last 3-2-1 tab, but otherwise I would normally put another 3-2-1 tab in. I'll just come back tonight probably and add another one. But yeah, I mean, very simple. Give it space. Give it a trellis. Boom.
Boom.
So I just throw out a tip. One of the things I've done in the past is when I've got a fence like this for like my cucumbers, if I were to plant a zucchini, I would probably do the same. But I usually do with cucumbers, I actually get our trellis netting. It's similar to this material on this A-frame one. Basically the same white netting part, it just doesn't have the frame. And I will actually just kind of stake it over here and run it up to the top of the fence. And I just staple it onto the fence as I go down. And then I plant my stuff in there. Well, I plant them first, but then I do that and I let that stuff grow up the trellis that way. So I might not go that far, you know, about that far out. But then they just cover this fence. And what's nice with that is you still got some of this other area. You can plant something else there and you're letting that stuff go vertical. So you can get a lot more stuff into a smaller area by doing something like that. And cucumbers are another one. If you want to do pickling cucumbers, that's a great one because you're pulling those off when they're real small. It's not going to pull that trellis down too much, so it's real easy to do.
Rebecca is asking, what do you recommend for squash bugs on zucchini for those who don't have the time nor diligence to scrape off the eggs every morning?
Yeah, it is a nightmare. I really like our 8 dust. It's a permethrin dust, but that does protect them for about a month. And just, I don't know if I have my.
I don't think we have one, but it's 8 dust. It's just a shaker, and you really want the dust. For some reason, the dust really works way better on the squash bugs. And get it around the crown, get it on the stalks, get it on the underside of the leaves, because that's where they're hanging out. You want to get it close to where they're at. And that will work for a long time. It's not organic, so you're losing that function. Some people, I'm still kind of on the fence about Last Call. Last Call is an organic, but I don't know if it's really working that well.
There's a dust form. I haven't tried it.
Squash bugs are tough. You know,
They
it's the
are
hard
tough.
part. They're just a tough bug.
Because they hate the sun, so they hide. They're always on the underside of that leaf.
We had an employee who runs a farm. He said he'd plant a ton of squash and everything, and he just said, I give 2 to 3 squash to the bugs. Said usually once what he found is usually once you get into June, July, if they don't have them then you're good. But sometimes if you're just planting one, that's not acceptable. So I think the 8 dust is the best thing to do. You can try diatomaceous earth. It's not going to be very effective for very long, so you're going to have to do it more often.
As soon as it's watered, it's
pretty
ruined.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have to apply it frequently, but it does work.
Yeah, it will work for a couple days. So if you can kind of get them to that point, at that point you're putting it on every couple of days anyway. You might as well just be pulling them off. It's kind of up to you. So
And that is kind of an old.
Chickens won't work. Chickens won't even eat them.
Really?
They're such a nasty. They're in the stink bug family.
They're scary looking
I
bugs.
tried
I wouldn't
that.
eat them either. It is kind of one of those old tricks I'd heard is, plant your squash a week after your neighbors. They tend to wake up, they find the first plant that they can find, and they stay there for the season.
That was Mike Stanton's old joke. So plant them after your neighbor, then you're good.
We had a real quick rhubarb question. Carla's asking, what's the best place to plant rhubarb? Does rhubarb take a lot of water? As somebody who's spent a few years trying to kill a rhubarb plant, I'd recommend your neighbor's house, but let's hear what the experts have to say.
We're all biased.
I love rhubarb. I have rhubarb on the dead opposite side of the yard. It's still in pretty much full sun, and boy, it gets watered twice a week. Is all I get. So not a lot of water.
I never water my rhubarb, and it's still gigantic. It's a very old plant, and it doesn't matter what I do. It's huge.
Yeah, we've already harvested it 3 times this year.
Mine bolted last year, so it's not doing much right now, but it'll take off eventually. So.
Yeah. Did that answer all the questions?
We have one that's asking, will it protect cabbage? I'm assuming that's maybe the permethrin dust we were talking about.
Oh, from the looper, cabbage looper, or the.
Yeah, you can get earwigs on them too. So
yeah,
you could use the dust. I wouldn't put them on the head. on, you know, as it's forming, you know, that the head of it, I would try to still put it around the ground. That can be tough for earwigs because the earwigs are so pesky. They get in between the leaves and can make it really difficult. So what I'll tend to do is, as I go out there, I'll kind of move the leaves around a little bit and try to blast them with some water and try to push them out, and then follow up with something after that.
Yeah.
The last call might be pretty effective. I know it's great on earwigs. This
Oh, you know what would
in
be
last
great
call.
for that, actually, is the bug and slug.
Yep.
Because the bug and slug is an attractant. So you can spread the bug and slug out over this whole area, and it's nice, and it's an organic one, and it's actually an attractant. So the bugs will come out and find it and then die. So that's probably your best bet.
It works extremely well.
earwigs.
Especially with
Slugs,
earwigs.
snails, the pill bug will love your garden, and earwigs.
Pill
and it's
buggers,
totally,
sow bug.
yeah, the sow bug, and it's totally natural. So,
Yeah, that's a great
We-
one.
we
Actually,
actually go through a
we
bunch
should
of
have
that.
brought that here because that is probably like, it's kind of like a staple product, I think.
And I bet
Yeah.
it's the #1 bug control that we sell, honestly,
Yep,
throughout the year.
It is.
That's
There's
an
one-
oversight on my
one
part. I
coming.
apologize.
That's on its way.
So when we do
I
Nolan's,
keep that
Oh, we
one
have
on
one.
hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
See, it's
Yep.
a
Yep.
staple. It's one you want to have with
It
you
is a
because it
staple.
works so well for such a good variety of bugs, and it's organic. It's seriously the best.
and such
Yeah.
a small amount. What is it? Like a 1-pound container treats 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just awesome stuff.
You're right. Yeah, people will tend to pile it. You don't need to pile it. It actually works better if you broadcast it.
A light
over.
peppering is how
Peppering,
you describe
yep.
it. Yep.
So
Yep.
was Christine
Do it
going to
like
grab
this.
it?
Yep. she
Okay,
is
so
grabbing
we'll,
it. There
we'll
it
show
is.
it here in a second. So let's go ahead and move on. Oh, we
Real
got
quick, yeah, we have one more question. Melinda's asking, Melinda's having trouble with basil and cilantro growing. Is Tomato Boom helpful for growing herbs?
You can use it on herbs. I wouldn't say it's my ideal. I would tend to just use Thrive on herbs because herbs are faster than how long it takes Tomato Boom to really start doing stuff. I would like to use something like Thrive on my herbs more than that, or even chicken soup. It's going to be a little bit faster. One of the bigger things you're going to deal with particularly those basil and cilantro, they don't like to be warm. So you got to find a shadier spot. You know, something like if this, I don't know if you can, if we can see this, but this side of Chris's house, you can see it's getting shade fairly early in the day. If this was a garden bed, this would be perfect for basil and cilantro because it's going to get shade pretty much all day. Even something like if you had thyme and rosemary, cilantro is one of they bolt like nothing. So
Yeah.
get them in early. This would be a good spot for lettuce as well. They like the shade.
Mm-hmm.
So try to find a shadier spot, something that's going to stay a little bit cooler for a little bit longer, and use something that's a little faster like Thrive. You don't necessarily need Tomato Boom.
Yeah, and we do all of our herbs in the whiskey barrels up
Yeah.
on the patio. They do great in
Something that's gonna
container.
be a little
Yep,
shadier.
Super simple. That's the bug and slug. So it is just a pepper, a granular form. It's a spinoside iron phosphate. So it does. I mean, it does great on those earwigs, sow bug, slugs, snails. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the more annoying pests. And it's
Tough.
organic, which is great.
Yep.
Top of it is a little pepper shaker. So customers always think that the bottle's empty because they do only fill it to here. They do that on purpose because this is also your applicator. So it's designed to be held sideways without spilling so you can pepper it out. So that is
But
why these are
That's
so
what, a 4-pound bottle?
3
3
pounds?
pounds is 6,000 square feet.
7,000 square feet.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Kelly's asking real quick, is the Z1 garden dust for slugs?
No.
no.
Nope, that's an insecticide. You need a molluscicide for slugs and snails.
This one?
This
That
one
one
is
right
the
there.
best one for slugs and snails. Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to get into some of the common problems. We've covered a few of them,
Few.
but we're going to get a little more in depth. So the first one I'm going to cover is end rot. End rot is, as we mentioned when we were planting the tomato, as your tomato grows early on, a lot of times you'll start to notice the bottom of the tomato, which is the end, it's also called blossom end rot, so that's where it started to come out of the blossom, starts to turn really black and it gets really squishy and just super gross. And if it starts getting end rot, the tomato's done. It's not going to grow anything anymore. I mean, it will keep growing, but that end rot's just going to keep taking it over. So it's super gross. It will ruin your fruit. So you do want to, if you start to notice it, just go ahead and pull it off. A lot of times, I will notice that I get end rot on my first few tomatoes, and I take those off, and I don't have that problem anymore. So that's my first suggestion when it comes to end rot. If you start to notice your first few tomatoes having it, just take them off. A lot of times that kind of catches it up. It gives the tomato boom more time to start working, and the plant will be just fine. Adjust your watering a little bit, and you can get rid of it that way. You can do a couple of other things in season. I didn't get a chance to get the bottle, but I think there's a concentrate as well. It's called end rot, and it's a foliar application. So if you're seeing it, pull those bad tomatoes off and just spray the plant down with the end rot, and that's a calcium foliar application. So the plant's going to absorb it right away, and it's going to start helping those next fruits come out nice and healthy and strong. As we mentioned, watering is a really major component to end rot. So if you're seeing end rot, chances are you're watering too much, or you're watering too much and then letting it dry out too far. So you want to water a little bit more frequently and maybe not as much. So take it down a little bit, water a little bit more, a little closer together, and that way you won't get that soaked to dry over and over and over again. And you can really stop a lot of it through just changing your water often. So that's really the best thing to do with end rot. The big thing, I think, is don't worry. Because it's black, I think because of the color, a lot of times people think that it's a disease, but it's really about the location. There are some diseases that will tend to make things look black, but because it's on the bottom and it's really just kind of eaten away, it's just that the calcium can't get into that fruit and keep the skin solid, and so it just starts to rot off. It's really just rotting off at the end of the tomato. So, Chris, do you have any other tips on the
No, I think
end
that
rot?
pretty well covered it.
So,
The only thing I'd say is if you are in the stores, it's called Rot Stop.
oh, rot stop, sorry. We had one called end rot, didn't we?
I think we did.
Yeah, I'm old.
That was like, 30, 40 years ago, maybe.
Yeah. Right when I went to the home office. Okay. So what you've got?
So Blossom Set Spray. There's so many things that'll stress out a tomato plant. It could be a fluctuation of 20 degrees between night and day temperature. Some varieties that'll stress. Overwatering, underwatering, a ton of things. But when they get stressed, it's that plant goes into survival mode and it will just drop all of its blooms. And I've had customers come in and say, something chewed off all the flowers on my tomato plant. And it's just a stress. So what the Tomato Blossom Set Spray does, as soon as you see that bloom, it's 1-2 pumps of this right into that flower, and it kind of holds it on through those different stresses, from anything, from whatever it might be. And I've also heard, I don't know if this is totally true, but I've heard it can also trick a plant into thinking it was pollinated. So if you're trying to get seedless watermelon or seedless something like that, you can spray this in, and since it's not truly pollinated, it can't produce the seed. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I heard from.
Is it on the label? Read the label for us right now.
Right now.
One thing I was going to mention on end rot, or blossom end rot, tomatoes aren't the only ones that can get it. A lot of your curbits, your zucchini, your squash, pumpkins, any of those guys can also get end rot, and it's really the same sort of treatment. If you've got it, go ahead and take it off. Chances are the next ones will come on. The thing about zucchini is that they're going to produce a ton of them, so losing 1 or 2 early on is not going to be a big deal. Just change up your watering. You can give it a little bit of the rot stop, and you should be just fine. So keep an eye on those as well. So that's Blossom Set.
Blossom Set Spray.
It's a nice one to have.
Yep, because something's going to stress it.
And one thing I've noticed with this too, you want to pay attention to the varieties you have. Something like a 4th of July, Early Girl. Some of those guys, some of those plants will, as it gets hotter, will tend to. Did you cover that? No, you didn't.
I don't think no.
A lot of times, some of those early season producers, once it gets to a certain temperature, will actually slow down production, and so they just won't put on more flowers. Which is what's nice about this, is because then you can make sure that any flowers it does put on stay on long enough to get pollinated. But that's more of a varietal issue than it is stresses. Those plants just tend to slow down when it gets real hot. Keep them going, because as soon as it starts to cool down again, you can get a nice new flush of tomatoes towards the end of the season.
At the 1 hour mark here, Lois has asked what's the best way to water tomatoes, drop line or a sprinkler. We'll definitely be covering watering here in just a second.
That's good.
Jennifer is asking, do you add Blossom Set Spray only if you're having problems or to prevent problems?
Both. Yeah, you can do either.
There's no wrong way.
I don't tend to deal with it unless I'm noticing I'm not getting some setting. It's just a hormone.
It's not a chemical.
It's not a chemical or anything, so it's not a big deal. If you want to do it as a preventative, I just don't tend to do it unless I need to. So let's move on. We've gone really long here, but some amazing questions. I really appreciate it. Let's get into a little bit of bug stuff. So we talked about the bug and slug killers, a really good one for like good general use. I really like neem oil. It's kind of been one of my go-to products to recommend when it comes to just your overall bug control strategy. What's nice about this is it also controls a lot of diseases as well. So you kind of get both functions out of one product, which is really great. But neem oil is an organic insecticide and fungicide. So any bug you have that's going on, if you're noticing some leaves getting chewed up and you're not sure what it is, just go ahead and hit them with some neem oil. Chances are you're going to kill it. And with a lot of the diseases, probably not so much early blight or late blight, but some of your others like powdery mildew, downy mildew, mostly mildew is probably the one that we're dealing with the most. This is a great one to do. It's really best as a preventative. So for things like your cucumbers, your zucchini, your curbits, any of those are going to be a little more prone to having powdery mildew or downy mildew. So it's a good idea to do those if you've had problems with that in the past. Have that ready, spray it preemptively, and you can stop it. The thing with powdery mildew is by the time we see it, it's actually it's through its life cycle. Yeah. So you're not actually killing it anymore. You're actually, at that point, you're just stripping it off. It's already done its thing. So if you do it beforehand, you're actually killing it before it spores out. Unfortunately, you can't see it
right.
until it actually spores, but it will work very well as a preventative. After that, you're just kind of helping clean off the leaf a little bit. But it works great for aphids. It's a tremendous aphid control, and a lot of other things as well. Spider mites, it's probably my go-to for spider mites. It's probably one of the better ones out there. Acephate is probably better, but it's not organic and it smells horrible.
Oh man,
but there's a few there's a few others out there that this is going to control. So this is kind of like you should have this in your toolbox at all times. I think it's a must-have for controlling bugs in a good majority of your diseases. So Chris, can you talk about late blight and early blight a little bit? We don't have...
Before we move on from bug sprays, Connie's asking, will any dusts or sprays hurt chickens?
Great question. The 8 dust actually has on the label dusting your chickens if they get a mite on them.
Yeah, mites or lice.
Yep, mites or lice. So that one for sure, diatomaceous earth, the same. You can actually dust your chicken with it.
And people will put both in nesting boxes and things like that.
Absolutely. And last call is organic. So
it's a bacteria.
It's not going to be one you're going to use on your chicken, but the 8 dust is a permethrin pyrethrin-based chemical, and it can be used with lots of different applications. So very safe to use around your animals.
Yeah, it can be applied to dogs for fleas and ticks as well.
Yeah, to get a tick on them. You can put it right on the dog. So, yeah, very safe as far as that goes. Blights, they're kind of rare. I mean, for the amount of problems that come into our store, people bring in samples of different things. Blights are definitely at the bottom. I don't get a ton of them, but you'll know if you get an early blight. The leaves will be almost twisted, corkscrewed. They'll be black and blotchy. And once you get them, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do. Pretty much that plant is trash. I'd get it out before it carries to another plant. And it'll take a carrier. It'll take something like an aphid or some sort of a chewing or sucking insect to chew on that one and then move to your healthy one to spread it. But I know Jim Zamza has had some luck. Once you get that in your soil, add some lime. The alkalinity of that will help burn it out of the soil.
Did you talk about pruning up the leaves on the bottom?
No.
So if you start to, early and late blight are soil borne. So they're in the soil. And if you're watering overhead, those water droplets and everything carry it up the plant. So if you can go in and take off the first couple layers of leaves that are closest to the soil, you can actually stop it from moving up higher. Also, how you water is a big way to do it. You probably covered that.
No, we haven't covered watering.
Oh, we haven't covered watering. Okay,
yeah,
so
and everybody's waiting with bated breath.
Yeah,
just saying.
For our hot takes on watering.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, but early blight and late blight, they're not terribly difficult to control. They can take over a plant very quickly. So you do want to be watching them. If you start to notice, that's one where it starts at the bottom. That's your first warning, is you're noticing color change in the leaves at the bottom of the plant. And then it moves up from the top. So that's how I typically determine whether or not something's an early or late blight and something else. If you're noticing color change on the top, that's not blight. That's going to be watering, sunburn, handful of other things. But if it starts at the bottom, that's the first indicator to me that you got late blight or early blight. get in there, take those leaves off that are damaged, and change up your watering. And like Chris said, put some lime down there, can help. So,
Can help.
okay, so let's speed up a little bit. Well, we don't have to speed up. I got plenty of time. Let's go into some feeding. So we've put all these things in, and we put the tomato boom in all of them. But as Chris mentioned, tomato boom takes a long time to really start working. And I don't know what it is. It's probably just like that I've gone to school and done plants for so long. I can't not water something in with Thrive or anything else, really. I have to, I have to water it in. So I've got some Thrive here. We also have some chicken soup. Again, like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with this yet. It's still one I'm like kind of waiting on. I don't know what I'm waiting for. I'm a little intimidated by it, honestly. Just because you don't need very much.
You don't need very much.
And I tend to, that's what I like about Thrive is like, it doesn't matter how much I put in there. But you can absolutely do chicken soup. You're just going to use quite a bit less. I would probably measure that one out.
Yep.
Very specific.
I mean, this is a half gallon. I bought this last year, but I'm down to there. So yeah, it does go a long way.
Yeah. So I've got some Thrive here, and I'm just going to, I think we did the same thing. I'm just going to, that's probably enough.
Give it the glug glug.
Yep, the glug glug method. You can measure it out if you want. It's totally fine. I just tend not to because I don't want to take the time to. But we've got all this stuff in, and we're just gonna get some water on them.
The water wall doesn't need it, but
that's your problem, not mine. We'll just get them planted. Just give them a nice drink. Doesn't have to be much. Have you got these guys before?
Yeah, they need it. There you go.
You already probably watered in with these, but might as well.
Absolutely.
You get those radishes.
Don't forget the potatoes.
Yeah, that's what it needs.
I really should have planted that. I'm just saying.
You can replant your potatoes when you replant that pepper.
Yeah.
I think I still got one in
That's
my
last
truck.
year's pepper.
All right, so that's it for feeding. I mean, doing that a couple times every couple of weeks you can do just that, honestly.
You can.
You could just do that all year, and you will have a lot of success. You will have great plants. You'll have strong plants with a lot of fruit on them. If you want to try some other things, that's what's nice about gardening, is you're always trying things. You're just going to practice. You're doing it over and over again. Grab some chicken soup. Do some tomato boom. Try some other things. I like putting foundation, which is earthworm casting. I love earthworm castings. They're tremendous.
Huge benefits.
They're
casting.
They're awesome. As we were digging these, I saw a lot of earthworms in there, which is awesome because they are just doing it for free. So
Randall just asked if that was straight Thrive.
no,
Nope.
it wasn't.
That was full a gallon of water.
That was maybe 2 cups.
Yeah.
2 cups of Thrive to that.
2 gallons. I'm sorry, it was a 2-gallon jug.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We filled the 2-gallon boat before we started.
Yeah. We we had water in it already. That would be awesome. 2 gallons of straight Thrive. Which
Hey,
you could-
Kelly, these classes
could
will
do.
absolutely be on the website. There's actually somebody posted a link to where the classes go here in the comments.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Might have been Callie.
It was Jennifer,
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jennifer.
I think.
What was the other thing we were gonna? Oh, watering.
We need
You
watering.
got it. You got
We
it.
gotta
Take care
talk
of
about watering. Yep. So you can see in my garden, I'm using pop-up heads, which totally work. Flood irrigation totally works. You can do overhead. There's no wrong way to water. Time of day, hugely
I was
important.
gonna say there's a lot of wrong ways to water.
Yes, I say how the water is applied. There's no wrong way. Timing, hugely important. So these come on at 6 o'clock in the morning throughout the season. Right now, they only come on Friday mornings. This is only getting hit once a week this time of year. My seedlings, I'm hand watering probably every day until they pop up. But everything else, I'm just letting those do it once a week. But you can do flood. I don't have good luck with drip, just because there's so much stuff everywhere. You'd have drip line running all over the place.
I've tried drip lines over the years and other beds, and I it feels like I'm fixing them every single year and multiple times throughout the
Yeah,
year.
they
So
plug
it
up.
just-
And that tomato's gonna send roots clear out over to here, and if I'm only watering right here, that whole root is wasted. So I do like a flood irrigation and overhead water, something to that effect. Drip is nice because then you're not watering weeds, but I think it can stunt some of your growth. As the season goes on, as we get hotter, I'll start adding a day here and there throughout. So by July, this will come on 3 times throughout the week.
For how long?
And so right now with these little pop-ups, I have them on for 45 minutes once a week. And I will keep them at 45 minutes as we get hotter. I'll just add a day and then maybe even
Add
a
more
third
days
day.
as we get hotter.
If I mulch this, like in the past, I've taken alfalfa and heavily mulched this with 2 inches of alfalfa, then I don't have to water for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah,
in
it's
between
amazing
that.
how much that layer of alfalfa just traps into the soil.
It does.
It just doesn't let
locks
it
in.
evaporate, but it keeps the soil warm and lets it get down there. It's awesome.
Yep.
And it's got that
Yeah,
whatever that stuff is.
lots of it.
The good stuff.
The good stuff. Yep, so it really depends on how much you do mulch, on how often you need to water. Our clay soils retain so much moisture that if these don't dry out, you'll start to rot roots off instead of promoting more roots. Which by drought stressing, and that's why I'm only doing it once a week right now, they'll send roots out searching for water, so you can actually get more of an established plant. So less is better when it comes to water, especially with our crummy clay soil.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you got to play with it too, because sometimes, what Chris has set up here, he's taken time and he's been here for a while now. He knows what's going to happen. Yours may be a little different. You got to play with it a little bit. You got to kind of figure out what you need. Your soil is going to be a little bit different, so you just adjust it. Don't be afraid to change it, even
recommend
every other week
for your
if you
lawn,
need to.
for your trees and shrubs, everything. Like
Yeah.
right now, my entire yard gets watered once a week,
I
and
haven't-
you can see it's a jungle.
I haven't watered my lawn in 2 weeks,
Yep, there you go.
so
Yeah.
we had a really nice heavy rain last year.
That was crazy.
It was wild. Okay,
Yep.
so I think that kind of covers everything we had planned to discuss today. So we've had some really great questions. If you have more questions, we'll take this time to answer some more, and then we'll wrap it up. So any questions you have right now, let's go for it.
Marla's asked, do you recommend Thrive for flowers as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can't put Thrive on. I mean, from house plants, trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals, roses, ground cover, everything.
I think, think about the flower that you have. If you're talking annuals, absolutely water them in with Thrive. Like, it's been so drilled into me over the 16 years I've been with Zamzos. I water everything in with Thrive. Now, if it's an annual, I won't necessarily do Thrive for the rest of the year. I'm going to switch to something that's got more phosphorus in it because I want to push blooms on them, because I want those baskets to get big and full and have lots of flowers on them. So I'll switch to the phosphorus at that time as we get later into the season. But absolutely, when you first plant them, Thrive is a must. And if you've got like perennials, things like that early on in the year, give them some Thrive. Now's a great day to do it.
Man, it is. It's gorgeous
It's just
out.
perfect to just go hit everything with some Thrive.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Sue is getting a planter box. They're adding hay on the bottom, then organic soil on top. Will the hay make the soil moldy?
I don't think so. I mean, the hay itself is going to mold. That's part of it breaking down. That's
But it's going to be at the bottom.
Yeah,
So I think I've seen some people talk about this, but putting that hay down at the bottom or straw to kind of make it so you don't have to put as much soil in the box is kind of a helpful way, so you don't have to get as much soil. Jim mentioned it on the radio show last week, actually.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. So if you've got a tall box, which is really nice, especially if you're like my wife Becca, she likes to garden, but she doesn't like getting down. She's got a bad back, so eventually I will have bigger boxes. But that's a good way, if they're taller, you can put a couple hay bales in there and then throw your dirt on top of it, and then you don't need as much dirt right away. You can keep, as the bales kind of degrade, you just add a little bit more soil to keep it up to level. So.
Yeah, hay's
And
a
then
lot
there's
cheaper
even
than
straw
good
bale
dirt.
gardening. I've
Yeah.
never tried straw bale gardening. I know people who have done it, and it seems wild, but
Yep,
they
I've
actually
never
grow
tried it
in the
either.
straw bales, which kind of blows my mind, but people
Yeah.
do it. So
Dave is asking if you can expand on cucumber trellises for a raised bed. Randall has a Frozen video. If that's a common theme, let us know.
Yeah, you might need to refresh. Trellis for a cucumber, or this?
Cucumber trellises for a raised bed.
Oh, okay, for a raised bed. I think this is.
I mean, a setup like this would definitely work for a cucumber. We have a heavier grade netting, like Nolan was talking about. For a cucumber, I would recommend the heavier grade, just to take the weight of it.
Yeah,
but
this one's more for peas.
Yep, it'll support the peas and beans and things like that. But a heavy cucumber, it's probably twice as thick on our.
Yeah, it just comes in a pack. It's actually quite a bit. I think it's like 20 feet or something. It's like 6 foot tall, 10 to 15 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, what I do at my place is I just I plant right along the fence, and then I stake the bottom of the trellis into the bottom, and I run the top of it up to that rail.
Yep.
That rail of my fence.
So it's coming down.
Yeah, and then I just staple it in. I've even just, like, if I don't want to go, I'm really lazy, in case you don't know this, but I've even just wrapped it around the fence.
There you go. It works.
Yeah, it works just fine. So, and then I don't have to pull out staples, and the netting lasts longer. But that's really the as much as it takes. Now, in your box, this side of setup is really well. You can still do it. What I would do, this kind of thing, get a couple of sturdy stakes.
Or even.
Oh yeah,
You could do a cage.
Absolutely.
And just take your vines and train them up. And I don't know if you've seen that green stretchy elastic tape. As your vines come up, just tie them to that. So that tape will expand as if the vine expands too. But you could definitely cage it.
If you want to go with the vertical idea, get a couple of good sturdy stakes, hammer them into each end, and then run your trellis between them. You may even get 3, put one in the middle, and then run your trellis to each one. Then you can grow it up vertically and save some of that space if that's kind of what you're going for. But that's another way to do it. Really, I mean, and nobody ever taught me that. I knew I had a thing, and I just thought of it. Like, it's like, oh, I could do this. And that's really a way to do it. Find something that works for you. The idea is you want to go vertical. So figure you can find a way to do that. Mm-hmm. You could even do something even taller if you wanted to, and even make it go out further. So they're actually growing underneath, and you can harvest from them below.
Yeah.
I probably couldn't because I'm super tall. Chris could because he's really short, and he's really close to the ground anyway. So just find something that works for you. There's lots of ideas, and the thing is, you'll have an idea, and it'll be even better because it's yours. So.
Jason, it looks like, has a hot pepper plant, the Carolina Reaper, that he plans to grow in a container. How big of a pot would you recommend?
Boy, those don't need a huge pot.
No, I mean a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, something about the size of a 5-gallon bucket. Doesn't even have to be that deep. That big around would be plenty. 12 inches around, so it would be perfect. And you could probably even go half that depth.
Yeah, they don't need
a ton.
And a Reaper is not going to be it's not a very big. I've never seen one. They're not a big pepper though.
No.
Like a jalapeno size.
Yeah, habanero size.
So yeah, they don't need much space. Habaneros, even the best I've ever gotten is like that tall, like 2 feet max.
Yeah.
They just don't get very big. So.
Nice.
But then find a good sunny space for it. That's one of the things. If you want that thing to be hot, get it in the sun. And
I've heard humidity too will boost the what do they call it, the Calvin?
The COVID scale.
COVID scale.
Yeah.
Not COVID.
COVID.
It's not the COVID scale. Let's make sure we reiterate
Colville scale.
Not the COVID scale.
I'm so sorry.
Well, on that note.
Yep.
Colville scale. Scoville.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's
Scoville scale.
Scoville. Could not think
The
of
good
that
stuff
word.
scale.
Anyways, humidity. Humidity really helps keep if you want it hot. Like,
and
burn
I've
your
heard, I
neighbor.
don't know if it's true, but I've heard that the better fed your pepper is, the hotter it gets. You know what I mean? If you're dumping
Using
the nutrients
pepper
to
popper,
it.
Pepper popper's a must.
Magic mineral, another good one. Good one for cucumbers too. Keeps them sweeter if you're getting bitter cucumbers.
So
That
Jim,
magic
this is a really funny thing that happened once. I was on the radio show, and somebody had asked about bitter cucumbers, and Jim actually called the show. Were you on that day, Cory?
No, I was laughing at the comments.
Oh, okay, I'm sure.
Scott did
Okay, he
confirm
caught
it's Scoville, and Kevin said on the COVID scale, this video's on fire.
But anyway, back to my story.
Bitter cucumbers.
Bitter cucumbers. What Jim said, he was at a sushi place and he talked to the guy who was making his sushi, and he said, how do you keep the cucumbers from being bitter? And what he said was, the chef, he said he cuts the top, the end of the cucumber off, and then he just rubs the two ends together, and it starts to pull the bitterness out of the cucumber. It
Literally
seems like
foams.
Yeah, it does foam.
Yeah,
Yep.
it foams
So
up.
if you're getting bitter cucumbers, keep that in mind. You just keep rubbing it together, and it'll pull all that bitterness out. It's supposed to work amazing. So
Crazy.
keep that in mind. Gosh.
All right, I think we're best off by wrapping this
If
thing
there's
up.
any other questions, feel free to ask them. I'll be monitoring this throughout the day, so if you watch it later, I'll answer questions later. And as we mentioned before, you can find it at zamzos.com, or you can find it again on Facebook. It will get posted as soon as we're done here. It'll just take a few minutes. So thanks again for tuning in, everybody. We really appreciate it. We've got a few more of these scheduled over the next couple weeks. I think next we were going to do... I think we're gonna do some pots.
I think so.
Right? We're gonna we'll be
Do some
a little
annual-
after Mother's Day then, and we're gonna make some baskets. So that'll be fun. If that's something that interests you, it should be a good time. We're gonna get to see Chris's creative side. I think I'm gonna let you plant Becca's, so then I can blame you.
Oh, there you go. Maybe we can get Christine in on this.
Oh yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, she knows
way
that.
better at that than
Absolutely,
I am.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then I think we had another idea after that, and it's escaping me now, but we've got a few more planned, a few more ideas. We have a thought for a chicken class.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna pursue that one. So if you're interested in chickens, if you're new to chickens, we've got Christian.
Hopefully. I haven't asked him.
You haven't asked him yet, so we won't. It's not necessarily going to happen, but we do have a lead, so we're pursuing that. Hopefully, we can make that happen. But if you have other ones, we're planning on doing this for a while. We're going to plan on keeping doing this. So if you've got more things you want us to talk about, we'd love to do that, and we're having a lot of fun, and I hope you are too. So, all right, we're signing off. We'll talk to you guys again soon.
Yeah, thanks.